Hello everybody and welcome to the show. We've got a 40-minute video for you today of week 10 and we've got an 8-team highlights. It's basically highlights of the start, the 5 and the 10 kilometer time splits with a little bit of, what shall we say, looking at the form of the riders in between. So we're going to make a start with the first kilometer for each team. And first off, I'm doing them in reverse order. So first off, we've got OTR Eureka, who managed to field 6 riders, as you can see on the line. But as we'll see in a moment, not all 6 managed to get through the first kilometer. So we'll watch the action and then I'll comment on what's happening in the video. Elliot makes a good start. And he's quickly joined by the other riders. The idea of the start and showing the start is to see the different approach by the teams. You can see the more experienced teams will form up pretty quickly. It took a few meters there for OTR Eureka to get themselves together. And already you can see that there's 2 riders slightly off the back. We're looking at the front of the race at the moment. This is not my footage. That's something else I have to mention this week. A lot of the footage, well, not a lot, but some of the footage is not recorded by myself, because in this situation I would normally be showing you the riders behind and how the group is running. But this was recorded by another streamer and sent to me. And you can see that Jay Robinson already, along with Poden, they're struggling off the back. Now they do get back on, and the team does come together, but this is a bit of a going into the almost 1 kilometer mark. It's a bit of a poor start from OTR Eureka. And you can see that Robinson is now 45 meters behind. Robinson never does actually get back onto this team. So we'll check the time when this team gets through the 1 kilometer mark, and I'm going to do that to all of the teams taking part. And they manage it in 2:17. Now, second off, who's this? Again, this is another video that's been sent to me without... this is Australia BA team. And again, footage sent to me, so that's why you haven't got the names on screen. And they make a decent start. Now, Derek Cam 2 was one of the borrowed cameras that I've managed to get for this footage, but I wasn't actually switching the camera around here. But I think this is decent footage. Now, I did mention in the comments on the forum about the graphics, and the graphics seem to be not quite up to the standard of the other skins in this particular skin. This is the spring in Europe. Now, it doesn't look too bad here, but you can see from the trees it's a little bit poor quality. It's really when the rain comes down that you notice just how poor the quality is still in this skin. Now, I don't know what's happened, because having watched footage from the other runs using the other skins, I have noticed that the quality is much, much better. but it just seems to be this one skin that's been affected. And this one again is called Spring in Europe. And a couple of the teams use this because they can choose their own skins when doing the run, and a couple of teams chose this one. But you see a stark difference when we go on to the teams using one of the other skins. A skin is basically what the Magic Road creators can use when putting the roads together. So there's a bit of separation with RGT Australia BA here. You can see a lack of experience, many bike lengths between the lad up front, Burgess, and Lowe, with the other two following on. But Burgess actually does. Here's the rain that I told you about. You can see it doesn't look anything like rain. It's a bit of a mess, to be honest. Now they go through in 2:11, so 6 seconds faster than OTR Eureka. And then third up, this is one of my recordings. This is RGT Australia CDE. And they managed to get 3 riders, and only the 3 riders on the line. The 4th rider is the camera me. So 3 riders throughout the ride, but they do put in a pretty impressive ride considering that there's just the 3 of them. They're off to a good start. They close up pretty quickly. And they do manage to stay together throughout the whole event. You see later footage where, yes, there's occasionally a couple of bike lengths, but in general, they do work pretty well as a threesome together. And I was quite pleased with this. Again, they're using the Spring in Europe footage. And again, you see the problems with the rain when that starts coming down, particularly later on in the video in some of the longer sections. I think you can see a bit of a lack of experience here. The 2 riders, you know, they need to slow up and allow McNulty to get on the wheel. But in general, for 3 riders, they do a pretty good job. It always takes a little while to sort of feel your way in, unless you've done this many times. And you see later on in the footage the likes of True 2, OTR Blue, you know, the real experienced teams. You don't see big gaps like this out of the start. But it's a learning process for a lot of these teams. And the fact that they can only get 3 riders together is a bit of a shame, really, because they can't really compete with the other teams that are putting 5 and 6 riders out. And that's very, very noticeable in the times. Now, here's that rain again, look. And you have to admit with me, this doesn't look anything like rain. It used to look better than this in the old graphics, so I don't know, they've tweaked, but not particularly tweaked this skin. And I think it's the only one they've obviously missed, because it's the only one that really looks poor. Okay, on to the 4th team, and we've got Australia AB this time. Again, my footage, you can tell with the branding OTR e-racing. And we have a full team here, a full team of 6. Now, I'll just check my notes and see. I think they do manage to stay together. Yes, they arrive at the 1 kilometer mark all together. So, and you can see the forming up. Now, obviously, this is the A team from Australia AB. This is a team that out of the Australians, we expect to be finishing higher up the rankings. And in fact, there is an interesting fact about Australia AB, which I'll come to later on in the video, because their split times, they did amazing in the initial 1 kilometer, 5 kilometer and 10 kilometer. But then something dramatic happened, and more about that later. But yes, they stay well together. They look good as a unit. I mean, yes, you'll always get the odd rider trying to trying to keep pace, as you can see Daly here. But actually Daly does a pretty amazing job, because later on in the ride he does get dropped, and I'll mention this and you see it in some of the footage, but he does an absolutely fabulous job to get back on. So yes, while he's hanging off the back, he is a strong rider, and he is capable of closing up the gaps. And as you can see from the footage at the end, when each of the teams hit the 1 kilometer, here's that rain again. But when they hit the 1 kilometer mark, you'll notice that I'm putting the times of all the teams on screen so that we can compare. Here we go as I speak. So Australia AB 148, knocking, what's that? 9. I can't get my maths. 11 seconds off their previous RGT team. Okay, this is again footage sent to me by West London, hence the branding. I wouldn't normally be putting branding like that at the bottom corner of my feeds, and you can see the rider in his pain cave. So this is not my footage, and rather than clean it up, which I could have done, by the way, I could have removed the branding and the rider, but I chose to leave it in because that just, they've sent me the footage. I thought the least I could do is leave their branding and their rider in the feed. Now, I mentioned last week that I thought West London had one of the best runs in terms of team performance. Not the fastest, but in terms of team performance, the way they ride, the way they stay together. And you can clearly see this here. Now, I watched their full footage of this race, and they're using Discord. So they're talking to each other on Discord. They've even got, I think, one of the wives acting as a team manager, who enters the chat as well. So it's pretty impressive to listen to and to watch. If you look here, I mean, just look how closely they are bunched together. And they're doing a pretty fast time, I have to say, as well. You'll be able to see that from the time splits as we go into the further into the race. But they do keep together amazingly well. And I was definitely impressed when I saw them for the first time. And the more I watched them, the more, I think this is a very well-drilled unit that will only gain in confidence with the experience they're getting. Superb to watch, because just so smooth. And the footage is good, by the way. This is, you can't quite see, it's not, you can see by the trees and the road, you can't see the texture, but it's good footage. It's good quality footage. So it's obviously taken on a decent system. Okay, OTR Blue are up now. Now, we've only got 7 teams at the start, and you'll notice that it's an 8-way head-to-head. OTR Blue are putting forward 5 riders. In future videos, obviously, I will spend more time discussing the riders. This has all been, this season 2 has all been, I've come to it late. I came in around week 8. I've come to it late, and it's been a bit of a rush to get these videos put together and to get myself sorted. I can promise you for season 3, the broadcast will be done much more polished, and I will be able to spend time on the riders and the different teams. But I'm still finding my feet. I'm still struggling to put all this footage together for you. I mean, this has taken me over 12 hours to put together. You might wonder where all that time goes, but it's a very time-consuming process, putting it all together and checking everything. Now, I mentioned earlier in my comments, OTR Blue are one of the teams that they do tend to stay together. They're a very well-drilled unit, very experienced in these team time trials. They've been here since the start, and they're just so smooth. there's no issues. I mean, yes, they lose riders occasionally, but that's all credit to them, because it means that, you know, they're putting out the strongest team, and all the riders are contributing, some to the point where they have absolutely nothing left and have to drop off. And that happens, and you see that happen with other teams and this team, you know, in past weeks and in weeks going forward. That's just the way team time trialing works. But a really well-drilled team coming into the 1 kilometre mark, you know, hardly a bike length has gone between this team as they approach, and 150. So, you know, they're currently in second place. Now, what I have to say as we move on to the next team, which is team True 3R. This team again have put together 6 riders, so a full team out, and again one of the more experienced teams. You're going to see them staying together. But while we're waiting for them to get off the start, I will just mention that you probably think, well, what's happened to the 8th team and where are they? Well, the 8th team was Team Viper, and sadly, due to I can call it tech issues, but in reality what happens is I have buttons on my Stream Deck that start and stop the recordings, and one of my little children actually came into the attic where my studio is and pressed the button without me noticing. So I wasn't actually recording for the first 10 kilometers of Viper. I just assumed I was. I mean, I'm watching it on screen, the action's happening, but I never noticed that the recording button wasn't on. And so sadly, we've only got the last half of the race from Team Viper. You'll see them later on in the footage. So my big apologies to Viper. Hopefully I will make it up to them in the future. But you can see in 3R True 2's footage here just how well this team ride together. I mean, as I say that, we get 2 riders pushing the pace on the front, but they do really ride together. They do close up the gaps, and generally you will find with 3R True 2, as with OTR Blue and some of the bigger teams like Tumeki, you know, they do tend to stay together. The more experienced teams, you have to, if you want to be competitive. Now, while we're waiting for this team to come into the finish, I will say that Tumeki and Minute, I haven't got their footage this week. Sadly, they were missed in the recordings. Okay, True 2 take the lead with a 1:43, so 7 seconds at the 1 kilometre mark, which is a fairly big advantage to take into the first 5 kilometres. And talking about the first 5 kilometres, now we've got a few points which I've made notes about. Now you'll see here that Burgess has been dropped off the back because Mr. Lowe here is really pushing the pace off the front. Again, this isn't my footage. You can tell there's no branding, but you can see that Lowe is pushing the pace off the front. There's a big gap to Burgess. But what happens next is that Lowe actually realises, way up, I've dropped my teammate, and he actually falls back. Now, this is why you should always keep an eye on your teammates, because you shouldn't be needing to sort of like drop back like this, pick up a teammate and then go on ahead. You should be managing your team so that there's only a bike length between each rider. Now this is RGT Australia AB, and the reason why I've highlighted this footage is because once again we see a rider, in this case it's Grantham, dropping off the back. And Grantham doesn't actually get back on. Later in the footage I did mention that we see Daly dropping off, but Grantham fails to get back on at all to this team, and we get that dreadful rain again, look. And this shows it in more detail, look. So something's gone wrong with the graphics here, folks. I don't know what's happening, but anyway, they're through the rain, or the laser beams, and they're looking good as a fivesome, but they've managed to drop Grantham off the back You can see he's now 48, 50 metres behind, and he won't get back on. And you can see Daly here, which is why I've left this footage running. This is where Daly gets dropped off the back, but he does get back on. Okay, and 3R True 2, sadly, they went through the 1 kilometre mark at a blistering pace, and that proved too much for Shearer. And I think it's Graham. Graham, you can see, really struggling to hold the pace. And then a little bit later on, you can see Mr. Saunders is having a bit of a difficulty to hang on to the group. Now, I can't remember. Yes, I can remember from watching the footage, yes. And Graham, that's the end of Graham as well. Graham doesn't get back on. Okay, so that's the talking points over with. We're going to get to the 5 kilometre splits now. And what I've done here, folks, is I put the footage from around about just before the 5 kilometre mark live as each team hits the 5 kilometres, and the times will pop up. There we go, True 2 through 5 kilometres in 8:20. Now I believe, I'm not sure who's next actually, I can't remember, but it won't be too long before the next team hits the 5 kilometres. But who's it going to be? It's a bigger gap than I thought actually. There we go, RGT Australia AB in 8:41. West London in 8:45 and OTR Blue in 8:46. Now remember that figure, folks. RGT Australia AB currently in second place at the 5 kilometre split. Remember what I told you in the notes earlier. Okay, this is not my footage, hence you've for two of the teams here, hence you've no branding, but you've got Australia CDE. You've got Australia, I think it's Australia BA, and you've got OTR Eureka. And again, the times were, there we go, RGT Australia in 9:22, Australia BA in 9:50, and Eureka in 11:01. Now obviously I edited the footage so that all the times would appear on screen. I didn't want to leave you watching and waiting minutes between each team hitting the 5 kilometre split. Okay, and a couple of more talking points here from the middle of the race, because we did have a few more dropped riders and a few more issues. So here you can see that Mr. Worry has a dropout, which is why his name's called Worry. He has a dropout and he's very quickly 70 odd metres behind. But then, in fact, even further, look, much further. We're down to, but amazingly, he gets back on. There we go, under the halfway point for this team. And I think, I'm pretty sure, although looking at, no, he can't possibly get, can he? Let me just check my notes. Does he get back on, Mr. Worry? Or am I confusing him with one of the other riders that got back on? Oh, no, it's another one of their riders that has another dropout later. So they lose Worry early on. And here you can see Mr. Walker has a dropout. But he very, very quickly rejoins. And I just thought I'd show this because look at the wattage he's putting in. 6.9 watt kilos in an effort to get back to his teammates. What a superb effort by Walker. Okay, so just a couple of points there I wanted to show riders having dropouts. So they still happen. And now we're approaching the 10 kilometre split. And I've done the same again. I've put the teams closely approaching. True 2 in there in 15:15. Now, have they pulled out a bigger gap on OTR Blue, on Australia AB, and on West London? Let's have a look and see what the gap is now. You can see the counters counting down, and Australia AB get there again in 15:42. OTR Blue a second behind in 15:43, and West London a second behind in 15:44. So look at that, 2 seconds between second, third and fourth. There we go. So we're back. Now Team Viper, they managed to come in with a 15:48. As I say, I've only got the footage from them just after the 10-kilometer mark, but we'll show them towards the finish as well. So Team Viper coming in with 15:48, and then I think it's Australia CDE that come in next. But again, the times, here we go, yes, it's just approaching now. There we go, 16:44. Australia BA with 17:22, and OTR Eureka with 19:13. So that's the 10-kilometer splits. And we're down to the final kilometer. Now I'm showing these in reverse order, and you get the times on the bottom right hand side of the screen of each team as they come in. But this is in reverse order, and first up, again, not my footage, which is why you've no branding, but this is OTR Eureka, and they by this time are down to 3 riders because they've dropped Elliott, Robinson and Worry, who had the dropout that I showed you in the highlights earlier. So 3 riders coming into the finish at the last kilometre. Managing to stay together, which is nice to see. This is the point where you don't want to be splitting up as you're coming in towards the finish. You want to be trying to stay as close as you can to get the best time you can, wheel to wheel. Just to remind you folks that as many as 6 riders can take part in these team time trials. There's talk that maybe they might increase that to 8, but I don't know whether that's going to happen. But 6 riders are needed, can take part, but only 3 riders are needed to finish. The time is given on the 3rd rider, which is why you see some teams unable to get a full team putting forward the 3 riders required. They're at a disadvantage though. Anyone that fields 3 riders is at a distinct disadvantage, unless they're very powerful 3 riders. So here we are, coming into the finish, Team Eureka, OTR Eureka, in 28:11. Now next up, who have we got next up? I think we've got, I think it's RGT BA. Yes, it is. So this is RGT Australia BA, the B team. And again, they're down to 3 riders, having dropped Baxter before the 1 kilometre to go mark. And again, if you remember at the start, we saw this team not really staying together, which shows a lack of experience. And we've got the same happening here. We've got, you know, all right, Burgess is getting back on. But if you remember, Burgess was one of the riders struggling earlier, and Lowell actually dropped back for him. So, yeah, 3 riders are coming into the finish, but they really need to get their act together when it comes to team tactics. Don't allow such big gaps, because riders having to close the gaps are burning matches, and there's only so much of that you can do. It does affect performance coming in towards the finish of a race if you've had to close gaps. Whereas if you can take advantage of drafting, you're going to get a faster time. That's what team time trialing is all about. It's all about the drafting. Okay, so Australia BA, they come in 25.37. Okay, Australia CDE. And again, we see that rain. Here we go. Free riders again, but they were free riders from the start, which I think is pretty amazing. They've stayed together pretty well. You know, there's been a couple of times where there's been gaps, but they've stayed together pretty well. And don't forget, free riders, they're not getting much recovery between turns on the front. So this is a good ride. And they're certainly not going to finish last. So this has been a pretty good ride by these free riders. McNulty needs to catch the wheel and get back on, because otherwise, as I say, the time is taken from McNulty here if he's the third rider coming in. So they don't want to let, well, he doesn't want to fall too far behind. And as you can see, he's going red to get back on the wheel. That's good riding, McNulty. Well done. Finish ban around this bend. And what time are they going to post? Small gap there at the end, but what they got? 24.45. Ah, my apologies, folks. I've missed off the CDE from RGT Australia there. It's on screen at the top. Okay, so Team Viper, who we failed to get footage of earlier on. Here they go. I always love watching this team. Partly because we've got my friend Chris O'Hearn riding for them, but yeah, they always seem to put in a really good, well, all teams do, but they do take fair turns on the front, and they always seem to be pushing everything they've got. Look at the red numbers. As I say, in future footage, certainly in season 3, when I'm more sorted with my studio and the actual editing on this lot, by that time I should be a little bit more polished than I am at the moment. And I will actually spend more time discussing the riders and their performances in past events, not just the team time trials, but past events, etc. It's just time-wise, I haven't had the time to do the background work that I normally would, because the editing process has just taken me so long. Nice hands raised there from the team. And Viper coming in 23.39. So a fairly big gap over RGT Australia CDE. And this is the third Australia team, the A team. And again, 5 riders still dodging the laser beams. So this is a good ride by this team to stay as a 5-some coming in. And Daly, who, don't forget, got dropped earlier, is the man pulling them home. I mean, that, probably the ride of the day. I think we have to give Daly the ride of the day, because to get back on like he did after being dropped a good way behind was an amazing achievement. And just look at him now, pulling this team to the finish. Superb riding, well done. I always like to call out riders that have really strong rides, and and I know it's a little bit unfair to single out one particular individual because everybody gives their all in these team time trials. But yeah, Daly deserves a special mention because just look at him. And this is a rider, as I say, that had a significant drop off. And all the riders go in red here into the finish. 7.9 from Daly to the finish there. Wow, what a performance. And they're coming in 23.37, so they beat Viper by just 2 seconds. It would have been nice, actually, had I had a little bit more time to do a head-to-head between Viper and Australia AB. Okay, so West London VR. Now again, this is not my footage, but you can clearly see how many we got. 1, 2, 3, 4. They managed to drop Arabona. He got dropped before the final kilometre, but they're pulling 4 riders into the finish here. Now, obviously, because the cam footage is from Martinoli, the finishing riders actually ride past him, and he's left behind. He's done his bit. He's absolutely shattered. So the team actually finish a good way in front of him. We're 500 metres here, but they do pull away from him and leave him behind. So they cross the line pretty much, a good few, I'd say a good 100 metres before he does. Probably a bit more, as you can see them pulling away now. Now, when I'm covering footage like this, obviously I switch views to the riders in front, but obviously because this is his own personal footage, he can't do that. Well, he probably could if he knew how, but that's another subject entirely, using spectate mode. So the team head under the banner. You can just see them in the distance heading under the banner. Time should come up any second now. Yeah, 23.35. So between Viper, Australia AB and West London, you've got 4 seconds. So what an amazing battle there. Again, given more, I mean, this is already a 40-minute video, but maybe we could have done the head-to-head there. Okay, and OTR Blue. Now then, OTR Blue, as you can see from, don't forget that Australia AB were in front of West London VR1 at the 5 and 10 kilometre splits. So they've been overhauled by West London VR1, and they also obviously are going to get overhauled by OTR Blue. So it appears to me that RGT Australia AB absolutely blew up in the last 5 kilometres because they lost 2 places, overtaken by West London and this team on screen, OTR Blue, which is pretty dramatic. I mean, we're only talking about a handful of seconds, but even so, amazing performances by West London and OTR Blue to do that, to pull out a deficit and go into the lead. So here you can see the team tactics from OTR Blue. The 3 strongest riders leaving behind Jim, who's done his work, Jim Ogilvie. He's done his work and he's leaving the 3 to finish. So we got my teammates here, Keith Barclay, Gordon Jackson and Peter Austin, over the line in, what we got, 23.31. So second, third, fourth and fifth split by 8 seconds. Amazing riding. I mean, you're not going to get much closer than that, folks. And I only wish I'd had the footage of Tumeki and Neck Minute, because I think they would have been in the mix here as well. But while we're watching 3R True 2 coming into the last kilometre, I will say that although I haven't got the footage, I have posted the complete results and the league tables later on in this video. So hang around till the end, because you'll see the full-time results of all the teams, and you'll also see the league positions. That comes up in a couple of minutes. We're almost at the end of this broadcast. Another couple of minutes to go. But remember what I was saying about True 2, always staying together. Just look at this. They're such a well-polished unit. Now, they may well split into the 3 needed to get over the line here. But even so, superb performance. And it's no surprise to me that the sort of like ruling the roost in this competition, along with Tumeki, who, as I say, I haven't got the footage for this week. I would have liked it, because I wonder how close they are to True 2. They've just got the beating of them at the moment, I think, this week. I seem to remember that they came in first. And we'll check that when we get the results in a moment. But True 2, they get a significant gap on OTR Blue. Significant being, well, look at it, 34 seconds. So a 34-second gap over OTR Blue. And well done to OTR Blue for closing up to that, actually. That's a pretty good performance. So, folks, that's the broadcast finished. We've now got the results to bring up on screen for you. So don't go away. And if you can hear background noise, that's my kids having a bath and screaming and shouting. Okay, here we go with the results and the league tables. And what did we get? We got 22.48 from Tumeki. So they took, what's that? 11 seconds from True 2. And then you can see how close it was. Okay, you can always pause the video there and have a look at that finishing screen. But thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Let's grow this channel. I put in a lot of work, and we'll see you in the next one.